Hello everyone, this is Father Christopher Etheridge, missionary on loan in the United States. Today is Thursday, August 22nd, and today we are celebrating the Queenship of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Our Gospel today comes from Matthew 22, 1-14. Jesus again in reply spoke to the chief priests and the elders of the peoples in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be likened to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. He dispatched his servants to summon the invited guests to the feast, but they refused to come. A second time he sent other servants, saying, 'Tell those invited, behold, I have prepared my banquet, my calves and fattened cattle are killed, and everything is ready. Come to the feast.' Some ignored the invitation and went away, one to his farm, another to his business. The rest laid hold of his servants, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged and sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. Then the king said to his servants, 'The feast is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy to come. Go out therefore to the main roads and invite to the feast whomever you find.' The servants went out into the streets and gathered all they found, bad and good alike, and the hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to meet the guests, he saw a man there not dressed in a wedding garment. He said to him, 'My friend, how is it that you came in here without a wedding garment?' But he was reduced to silence. Then the king said to his attendants, 'Bind his hands and feet, and cast him into the darkness outside, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Many are invited, but few are chosen.'" The Gospel of the Lord. A wise priest once said that there are two parts to a homily, a beginning and an end, and the aim is to bring them as close together as possible. So let's start with the beginning and hope the end isn't far away. We find Jesus in the temple today hounded by the scribes and Pharisees. They are laying discursive traps for Jesus, trying to catch Jesus in his words so that they can accuse him of some crime, blasphemy, false teaching, anything worth putting him away. But it's hard to catch truth and innocence incarnate in a blasphemous statement or false teaching. And so Jesus, knowing their hearts and knowing their intentions, tries to bring them to conversion with another parable, the parable of the wedding feast. In this parable, we find four responses to the king's invitation to come celebrate the wedding feast of his son. They are stubbornness, apathy, contempt, and laziness. And unfortunately, these four responses are still being used by men and women today, even on occasion maybe by you and me, in response to God's invitation to a deeper conversion. Let's look at two of them briefly, and then reflect on them in our own lives. First, stubbornness. Matthew relates that on the king's first attempt to summons the wedding guests, those invited refused to come. The shocking part about this stubborn refusal is that according to the local custom of the day, these guests had already given their RSVP to the king. You see, in Jesus' day, two invitations were sent for a wedding feast. The first was the commitment invitation. Upon receiving this invitation, if the person committed to coming to the feast, then they would await a second invitation, telling them the day and hour of the celebration. Thus, this stubborn group of men and women have already committed to the feast, but now, on the very day of its taking place, they are going back on their word. They are stubbornly refusing to keep their commitment. Perhaps something similar takes place in our own relationship with God. Perhaps we too are stubborn to fulfill our promises to the Lord, stubborn to make good on our baptismal promises or good resolutions, simply because we don't feel like it today. We are going to pass over the second and third group of wedding feast no-shows, that is, the apathetic and hostile guests, and turn to the last type of response given to the king. It's a rather subtle but surprising response: laziness. In the latter part of the parable, we hear that among all the wedding guests present, one among them is not dressed properly for the occasion. He does not have his wedding garment on. Now, for those of you who don't know, it was also a custom in Jesus' day that a wedding garment be provided by the host to every invited guest. Thus, this man had no excuse in being improperly dressed for the feast. He had been given his garment, but he was just too lazy to put it on. Laziness can also hinder us in our relationship with God. How much God has done for us to help us grow in holiness. He's created us, saved us through His Son's death and resurrection, gifted us with grace, washed away our sins through baptism and every confession, fed us with His Son's body and blood in every Mass and Holy Communion, and the list of many more graces could go on and on. Thus, we should all ask ourselves, what have I done with so many gifts of grace? Have I put them on? Meaning, have I rendered them fruitful? Have I responded to them with love and obedience? Or have I too been lazy in the presence of my King and my God? As we celebrate Mary's queenship, let us ask our heavenly Queen for the grace to hear and answer the Lord's call to deeper conversion, so that one day we too may share in the joys of the eternal wedding feast of heaven. May God bless you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed hearing the gospel and homily, I invite you to share it with someone you know who may also find it rewarding, and also to subscribe to the Catholic Voice channel. Please see in the description below if you would like to receive a text message for each daily gospel and homily. Please also keep our missionary priests throughout the world in your prayers. Thank you, and God bless.